Hi guys, I'm working on a binding right now, and many have asked how I do my bindings, how I sew my bindings on. So I thought I would make a little video real quick to let you guys see what I'm doing. So the first thing I do is I cut my binding strips at 2 3/4 inches. I like the way that looks on the quilt. I like what it shows on the front of the quilt and in the way it rounds to the back side of the quilt. So the next thing I'm going to do is how to find my seam allowance. I'm going to press this into thirds, and I'm just going to give it a finger press, making sure that it is a third inside and then a third hanging over this way, and then give it a press. And now I can see where I need to stitch. That's going to be my seam allowance. So on this one, it ends up being about 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you can see I've stitched down all the way to this corner. The way to do the miter corner is because I've got a 5/8 seam allowance, I need to stop 5/8 inches away from the bottom edge, and I have done that, and I've back stitched. Then I pulled it away from the needle, and now I'm going to fold it up on the miter, and you can see that the bottom of the quilt is even with the bottom of the binding strip, and I'm going to keep my fingers there, flip it back over to the left over the top of my fingers, making sure that the strip is now even with the bottom of the quilt and that the fold is on the very edge of the right side of the quilt. I'm going to leave my fingers there, I'm going to rotate it up and around, and I'm going to start stitching at that 5/8 seam allowance right off the edge of that quilt, and I'm going to keep on driving. So I've got just about maybe 20 inches or so here that I'm going to keep driving, and we're going to put you on pause until I get to where I need to finish off this tail, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, we're back. So what we're going to do now, I finished sewing my 5/8 seam allowance all the way around, and I'm to the end where my tails I need to connect my tails on this binding strip. So you want to leave yourself a good 10 or 12 inches open so that you can, I like to sew the bindings together by a diagonal seam. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this one back. I've got about 5-6 inches over here. I'm going to fold it back about halfway, and I'm going to crease it. Then I'm going to take the other end of the tail and do the same thing. I'm going to fold it right up against it, and I don't need to leave any space between it. I just want to butt it right up to it, and I'm going to crease that too. Give it a good steam. Okay. Then what I'm going to do, I love the easy angle. This is a 4.5 inch easy angle ruler. I use this all the time when I'm finishing my bindings. So I'm going to open this up. Now I have my crease. You can draw a line down that crease. You don't have to because you can see it, but there's my crease. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these dark lines, line it right up on the center crease, and I'm going to draw my angle from upper left to lower right. That is my sew line. So now I need my 1/4 inch line. So there's a 1/4 inch marking on this ruler. I'm going to put that 1/4 inch on that drawn line, and I'm going to draw another line. Okay? So now I need to do the other side. I'm going to open up this side. There's my crease right here. I'm going to draw the line, and then I'm going to rotate my ruler, and from upper left to lower right, just like I did on the other side, I'm going to line my center pressed line crease up with a solid dark line so that it runs right through the center of that fold, and I'm going to draw my line. That's my sew line. I need to add a 1/4 inch with the ruler. There's a 1/4 inch line. I need to add my cut line. At this point, Pam, can you hand me my scissors? At this point, I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of this off. And I know some people get really scared at this point to cut this off, but I've been doing this long enough. I know this is going to work. Cut it off at the 1/4 inch line, and again with this one. Open this up. Cut it at the 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to take and pin this, and we're going to take it back to the sewing machine. So give me a pause. Okay, so I'm back at the sewing machine, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin through my sewing line, and you want to make sure that right sides are together on the angle. I'm going to put the pin through the center crease, the center line, and I'm going to find the center crease and the center line on this side. I hope you can see this pretty good. Okay, so now I have that crease. I have found my center. This takes a little minute, takes a minute. And then I'm going to leave that pin hanging out while I pin the other two ends. So I'm going to go through this line, go through this line, and then fold it back on itself and pin. And do the same with the other side. Through this sewing line, right on the money on that one. And now I can take the center one and fold it back into itself. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew that right on the line. I'm not moving my needle because I want to finish sewing my binding on with the same seam allowance, and I have my needle moved to the right a little bit, so all I need to do is just sew right on that line. And we're driving. And you can see it's pretty close to the line. It's not perfectly on the line. Get that thread out of my way. I'm going slowly over my pins because I want to make sure I stay right on that line on the front side and the back side. All right. And you can see I'm right on the back. I'm going to take my pins out and I'm going to give it a pop, and look at that, how perfect that is. So I'm going to we're going to pause for a moment, and we're going She's getting me laughing. Okay, so now we're back at the ironing board. Come down here, and this is the seam I just sewed. I'm going to press it open with my finger and then get the iron down to it. And give it a press. Then I'm going to pop it into place again. Make sure it lines up even with the quilt. And I'm going to press it, and look how nice and flat and how fitting that is in that area right there. So we're going to pause again. I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish sewing this closed and then talk to you about how I press it up so that I can fold it over in and keep working on it. I'll be right back with you. Okay, are we ready? Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead, and I just started back about a quarter of an inch, half inch on my sewing line, and I'm just going to go on and finish this and making sure it's right on the edge. And look how nice and flat that is. My machine is bouncing all over the place because I'm on a plastic table. I'm not stretching or pulling, I'm just guiding the quilt. And I like to keep my fingers, my left fingers, close to the foot, because if I see that I'm starting to get a little ripple, I can pull it with my middle finger and my index finger and keep that ripple going so that I don't have a crease in my binding. So I'm going to just drive over this about a quarter of an inch, and I've got the binding sewn on. So now I'm going to go back to the ironing board and show how I press it up so that it's easier to hand tack it down. Okay, so we're back at the ironing board. Everything's pressed in place. I will go back and trim these little points, but if you just start and give it a press all the way around and then press up and then take your iron and go right into your corner and get your miter so that it pops right on over. Then when you've got this all complete, you are ready. This thing is going to turn over so beautifully and lay exactly where it needs to lay on the back side. And it's going to, when you're hand tacking this down, your miters are just going to be beautiful and come right around the edge, right around that corner, so pretty. So I hope this helped you. I hope you get more bindings done. Yay! I have a bunch of funny girls behind the camera here, so I appreciate you watching my videos and let me know what you think about this. Thank you very much.
Woo!